Chrissina, welcome to the Commerce Talks podcast. Initially, when Lina came to me with the idea that we should record a podcast with you, I've never heard about like IDS.com. And I went to the website, and the first question the website was asking me is, what's your favorite whiskey? So I really felt at home. So I'm really looking forward to have like a nice conversation today, asking you, and Lina obviously asking you too, also here in our podcast studio. Please tell us a bit more about IDS and yourself.
Okay. Hello, Alex. Hello, Lina. Thank you very much for having me today. Feel very grateful to be able to be on your podcast. IDS. So IDS, I joined approximately 16 months ago. When the sort of job came up and when they came to me, it was an interesting one for me because obviously it aligns to my background in alcohol. But also because when they first spoke to me about the role, they highlighted how niche the audience was and how sort of new, I guess, to the marketing that the business was. So it immediately sort of piqued my interest about what the opportunity could look like from a marketing perspective. So IDS is International Diplomatic Supplies. They are based in 4 locations around the world. They sort of, to put it in a nutshell, we curate goods, particularly alcohol and groceries and perfumes and things like that. And then we sell on to the diplomatic community. So, and from a duty-free perspective. So we are quite an unusual business in that it is almost FMCG in many ways, but to a B2B audience in the way that they purchase, and then also to a B2C audience in the way that they sort of consume content and purchase online. So it's a really interesting business. We operate out of Miami, Europe, UK, and Dubai, with Dubai being the sort of head office. And we currently ship products to over 80 countries around the world. And majority of those are in quite inaccessible places around Africa and parts of the Middle East. Would be majority of where our business is. So yes, it is. It's a really interesting business. And when I came on board, the business had approached growth, I guess, from a more traditional sales model. And then obviously they are interested in growing the business. And then it was highlighted that obviously online is the space to do that. So I was brought in to sort of start the marketing department and focus on our e-commerce sites. We have many. And to grow the business from that perspective. So that has been the journey so far.
What have you done before? Like you said you have like a history in alcohol, I guess like a professional history.
Yes. Well, I do also like drink. Yes, I worked for Pernod Ricard for 4 years as well, based in Sydney. So my role there was to head up the CRM and e-commerce division for the global wine portfolio, with the particular brands were Jacob's Creek and Brancourt Estate. So yes, that was my history in alcohol.
And can you give us a bit more numbers or just facts about the market itself? Because it sounds like a super niche market, like diplomatic supplies. Yes. So how many people on a global level, or even like the markets you're catering, how big is the market? How many people are working there?
Yes, it's a really good question, actually. So I think that, well, I would think, to be really honest, I can't actually put my finger on exactly what the size of the market is right now. It's something that we're trying to work through. I mean, we can obviously Google how many diplomats there are, but I would say that we currently have about 30% market share at the moment, and majority of that is coming through from the Middle East. So the Middle East is our biggest. The Middle East are the biggest markets, and that I don't think is surprising given the nature of that we sell alcohol and that these are predominantly dry states. But then we also have a very, very big opportunity in Africa where it's inaccessible. So these are diplomats who are deployed on missions from other countries, say for the UK or the US. They have missions in places like Sudan. And they can't easily access sort of alcohol or groceries or even homewares is something that we also sort of offer.
And why is that in the case of Sudan? Just like to make it a bit more tangible as an example. So yes. Why is it? So I would have expected that even in Sudan there must be like an FMCG kind of supply chain available. Maybe not your top Talisker whiskey, whatever. But there must be something that is like, because there must be demand, like a local demand, regardless of the diplomats being deployed there.
Yes, yeah. I think there definitely are many local options, particularly in some of the more inaccessible places. But they may not be may not be cost effective, or they may not be exactly what they're after from a variety perspective. So for example, US missions like to order US groceries, and I guess it is that feeling of being able to order something from home is something that they're familiar with, particularly when they're deployed for quite a long time. So it's a familiarity and a preference thing.
Yeah, this is super niche. Lina, have you seen such a niche business before being in touch with IDS?
No, it is very niche, but I would say just not many businesses can cater to sort of assortment. Also, as Chrissina pointed, if you are from the US, you like US sort of groceries and brands. If you're from the UK, you would like to order UK products and so forth. So it's niche when it comes to looking from outside. But when you're from inside, if you are the diplomat, IDS perceived as sort of Walmart, or like a premium Walmart or Amazon of every single product from all over the world. So you can get your local products and brands, and at the same time you're exposed to the global brands at a very attractive price. I would say
yes, exactly. Yes, because of course it's also duty free as well, which is something that you're not going to get if you locally source it.
Yeah, but Lina, I know you're usually involved, like when you're help other e-commerce businesses, like in like asking the question, what's your USP? How do you win customers? Yeah. So when you first saw this business, it seems to be like an impossible task, because like all the standard ways of winning customers online, Facebook and Google, I might target maybe on LinkedIn people with like a certain like embassy tag in their profile, but I don't know. It seems to be very, very hard. So how did you go in your analytics world about this kind of business?
From my side, I would say yes. Here we're still more, let's say, applying the B2B techniques where the physical, like the real salesperson, is still required, and the relationship is everything. So that's the hard part. I think it takes, like in any B2B business, it takes longer to convince the consumer, consumers to sign up with you. But once you have signed up, the services that, like I would say, the USP of IDS is the services that they provide. And if you look even on their e-commerce website, they can commit to the delivery timeline anywhere in the world to pretty much the second, which is very, very unique. And on top of it, they deliver to their promise. So price, assortment, and services, I would say it's like top notch for these guys. So once you signed up, and if that diplomat is currently, let's say, in Sudan, in 3 to 5 years, the same diplomat will be maybe in the United Arab Emirates. So once you got the relationship going, you and you still continue offering great service and assortment, it's very unlikely that that embassy or the diplomat will switch to another player. So I would say retention is easier, but initial acquisition is a lot harder and takes a lot longer, and might need that omni-channel approach where you have a salesperson at the same time, you have CRM and data, and Chrissina can tell more about it, how we are engaging them on a constant basis so they don't forget about it.
Just to prevent that it's like too niche. So what are we talking about, like in terms of revenue? We don't need exact numbers, but we are still, it's a sizable business, right? So it's not just you and like one guy shipping some boxes. No. It's like it's quite a business, right?
Yes, we have 75 people who are employed with the business and based mostly in the UAE. But then we have the other hubs that I mentioned. There's also sort of warehouses and staff, administration and staff within those offices as well. So there's quite a few of us.
And how do you identify your customers in your countries? How does it work? Is it like word of mouth?
Yes, that's a really good question, actually. So we are on a journey, and as Lena said, it is quite difficult. I think if we were to sort of have a look at acquisition, it's only something that is really sort of starting now, and I think that that's been because the first year into this role and into the business was really sort of having a look at what was happening organically. So what is happening with our existing customers and how can we grow through word of mouth and through other sort of tactics using data. But we are very much at the very beginning of an acquisition approach, and we will have to use. So we already sort of dabble with paid search and some things like that, and a little bit of social. But we need to sort of have a look at sort of broadening that, I think, and telling more of a brand story and reaching people in more traditional ways, so that we are sort of creating that future demand, I think, because we're very good at sort of seizing current demand and converting current demand. But I think that we have a job to do from a brand perspective to sort of drive some future demand as well. New growth, that is.
All right, great. So as you talk about, Christina, about growth, maybe let's switch about the digital channel. And as you just mentioned, you joined nearly 2 years ago, and approximately 2 years ago, to grow that new channel for IDS. And while preparing for this podcast, I found some statistics saying that 93% of B2B players, the buyers prefer to buy online when they decided to buy. So as you said, once they hear about IDS, actually the purchasing channel, the preference is online. And also another stat I found is that around 60% of B2B organizations have like 1 out of their 3 customers buying online. So maybe you can tell more about the IDS, like where are you in the journey, considering you just started, and do you see that more and more the existing maybe customers are starting to use your online channel? And if not existing, do you acquire new customers because of the e-commerce channel?
Yep. Okay. It's where it gets pretty interesting actually for us as a business, because we really have sort of 3 different types of customers, and the last part being consumers. So I think the first would be really pure B2B. It's organizational. It's someone who have a retail, like a commissary or a shop, where they basically buy on behalf of the shop. So we can consider that very pure B2B. And then the next sort of level down, we have someone who might be a manager for the entire embassy, and then they might order on behalf of all of the diplomats within an embassy. So they're kind of a residence and a residence manager, and they would be a B2B, but they're still B2C a little bit. They start to cross over a little bit into B2C. And then we have the last one, which is truly B2C. It is people, as you were saying earlier, there's people who can go online and they can order once they've joined and have an account. They can order in the same way that a consumer could from any major retailers. And so the approach is different for all 3. The retail and the sort of residence managers being the sort of the hardest, I guess, to get them to convert or to change to online, even though that is gradually increasing. And that is because of, it's again that sort of strange, we are FMCG in the nature of our products, but then B2B in the way that they purchase. So they have huge orders of many items, particularly groceries. I mean, literally hundreds. So it isn't as feasible for them to order, to go through the website and to order every single item in the same way that a consumer would and that they do. So for them, we still have 70% of people purchase online, but we have a couple of additional challenges with those particular customer groups. So we are experimenting with new channels to do that. So say, for example, WhatsApp and things where we can, and even within the e-commerce platform where we can preempt what they're going to order. This is not revolutionary at all, but it just makes sense from us from a business perspective. But we might preempt what they're going to reorder, or we represent them with what they've ordered, and then they can order again, and then just try to simplify that process for them so that it is still B2B, but it starts to become a bit more frictionless.
Yeah, I was anyway wondering, so because like if it's like a diplomat or like somebody like in the diplomatic team is ordering something, the average order value is most likely above like $100, maybe $200, $300,
yes.
$100, especially if it's a B2B order, it might be even higher. this kind of average order value plus the very very individual contact you're having with your customers, because it's such a niche that screams messaging commerce. So it must be WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, or whatever. Because hey, I need like these 3 whiskey bottles, and there are some other drinks, and can you pack me this kind of order? I need it like at this address. You have usually you must be like able to identify the customer through the WhatsApp number or Facebook Messenger ID or whatever. You have a existing customer relationship. In many B2B relations, I know payment can be postponed, like in an invoicing process. So you don't need ad hoc credit card, whatever, which is harder to do via WhatsApp. So can you tell us a bit more about exactly this transformation? Your online transformation might be that you're jumping like the curve. You're going not from offline to website. My best guess would have been you're going from offline to WhatsApp.
Yes, particularly for quite a large group of the more really sort of traditional B2B customers, we certainly are. In terms of the transformation, we are just starting on some of these journeys from a messaging and social commerce perspective, to be honest. But when I first started, I think the most important project that I sort of kicked off and ran with was implementing a consumer data platform, which was and is the most important tool that will help drive a lot of these sorts of things, including our ability to communicate with WhatsApp and other social channels with data and insights about what we know from the consumer perspective. So we implemented that pretty early on, and actually that has been something that not only has made execution from a communications perspective super easy and much more efficient in a business's size, but it has also started to inform some of the other areas of the business from an insights perspective. So what are people buying? What's trending? And that also then gets served back through the website and things like that, and then through the communications. But then it also goes on to purchasing and other areas of the business in terms of product as well. So that was a really important piece from a transformation perspective for us to put into place really early.
So you mentioned a few of the challenges, and one of them, if I summarize correctly, is that getting big players to switch to the online because of the order size. It's challenging. So what you're trying to do is to simplify that journey by using automation and kind of reloading their baskets with relevant products. Second thing, I hear that you're using a lot of other, what we would say e-commerce, but you are going back to basics, kind of using e-commerce, but still on a one-to-one relationship, like through use of WhatsApp and other messaging platforms. And for that to work, you relied a lot on the data, and CDP and all was very important tool. And any other challenges, that you face as this business when it comes to selling online? Is there anything else you would add?
One of the biggest challenges that we have, and we've got a solution in place, but I think it's something that we need to have a look at. And again, I think this will come through from a transformation perspective, is probably the complexity of the products and the pricing. I think is an area that will be interesting for us. So we have 7 different e-commerce sites. They're all individual sites at the moment, which I think you could probably both agree could definitely be consolidated. But the reason for that has been is that we've got different pricing and different structures for different customers from every hub, and different product availability from every hub, because what you see on the site is what's available. So it's all directly linked. So I think that is a challenge for us as a business, because obviously off the back of that, it's a lot to sustain, but it's incredibly important for the customer because they can see live stock and they know what they're getting is what they're ordering is what they're getting. But I think that that's something that we need to have a look at as a business to improve our operational efficiency.
But am I right if I guess that the time when you started this kind of like e-commerce business is a different side? I think like especially the Dubai region, the Magento was kind of a very popular choice. Implementing a more complex system that would have allowed you to set up like multiple warehouses, different like inventory management, different pricing schemes with just one interface where the customer logs in and say, okay, I'm a Dubai resident, and I'm Ahmad whatever, yeah, and then I get a different price, which is like a very complex calculation in the back office of the system, which wasn't actually that was never Magento was built for, not or Shopify, whatever. But when you started, that wasn't your main issue. I guess when you started, it was like to prove that e-commerce is kind of working. So you've chosen like affordable, quick way to do it. Is this correct?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I mean, and I'm sure there's products that are interesting to compare with Magento now that maybe weren't around even when they were considering it to start with. So I think that their business, as we've moved into Miami and moved into Europe only sort of fairly recently, and Magento sort of existed just before that. So I think that the business has grown and the complexity has grown. And I think like a lot of businesses that these things start to become a bit Frankenstein looking because they get sort of bolt on as the requirements change.
It's interesting like to hear like for our audience, like this kind of transformation process, like in learning, yes, e-commerce works. And then obviously e-commerce is not just a channel. It's kind of a very different business model. You have to invest into e-commerce, like in your e-commerce setup, in your order management system, in your inventory management system, like you would to invest in your inventory management or like in a new warehouse or in a new building. So this kind of understanding usually grows within an organization while the e-commerce share is growing. Can you share the experience here? Because like you're like in the business only for 60 months, but I guess like there's like this kind of e-commerce momentum is still building up within the company because it was a company established on the heels of like the field force, right? On people like meeting diplomatic staff, like calling embassies and going there, presenting like the products and waiting for the orders via phone or a fax or whatever. And now it's growing. It's your experience, real e-commerce transformation. So can you share a bit like how this works?
There's quite a few things that I think are contributing to the change. So one is that if you look at the diplomatic community, I think there's usually they're around in their roles for quite a long time, and I think that traditionally that they are not accustomed to necessarily ordering things online, and we have some instances in drier countries, for example, where they might not be able to access things online, such as alcohol, for obvious reasons. So there's a couple of factors at play that are slowly changing, and what is I think still contributing to there being about 30% of offline behavior. But then the big part that was contributing to it, I think, was what we spoke about earlier, which was the really large orders, and for that not to have been a seamless process at all. So trying to put in place some things that would help them to be able to order such large orders, and for that process through e-commerce to be more frictionless, has been a really important part of trying to convert people online, because now the sales team and the field can go and see a customer and they can walk them through the process to purchase online.
Is the average order value online bigger than the offline order value?
No, I would say it would be the other way around, which is exactly the point, right? It is the really large orders that have been troublesome because people are not going to sit there and process super large orders by clicking add this to cart. So that has needed to be solved.
And then I have a follow-up question before I hand over to Lina, and I know it's her turn to ask questions now. But then I have a follow-up question, because usually you can connect those two phenomena, because if you see like an online order with like, I don't know, with a certain price point, $1,000, for example, then implementing a way saying, okay, this order needs to be rerouted into our offline sales team first, because maybe this person like ordering so much stuff, there's like other items he or she might want. So let's call her or him first before we process the order, so we can generate some cross-selling effects and get this order to $2,000, $3,000, $4,000. So though it's like the best of both worlds, like for the standard stuff, like just putting some numbers into the system, whiskey in the system, nobody from the feed force is needed. But if there's like special requests, like, okay, but on top we have like a party and we need this and that, then obviously somebody on the phone might help even better. Have you done this, or can your systems do this?
Yeah, so that is something that we are now starting to deal with from a communications perspective. So again, it comes back to CDP and understanding what are the triggers, I guess, for trying to drive upsell or minimum spend and things like that. That is being, because it needs to be done at scale. We are 76 people, but it's still a relatively small business, and the sales team will always need to focus on the sort of more relationship, sort of bigger, those B2B clients. So then I guess then what is left for marketing is kind of doing the long tail, and exactly what you just said. That's our job through a communications perspective, is to try to drive some of those average order values and things like that up.
Hey, so you mentioned a lot. I think we discussed technology. We briefly touched marketing. I would like to pick up more on marketing. But before we go there, maybe you can, because in the B2B world, services is everything, right? And we know that when you have a person dealing with you on a one-to-one basis and checking with you and meeting you and taking you for a number of coffees every single month, probably to replace that with online channel, it's quite difficult. So maybe you can tell our listeners more about the services that IDS offers and how important are communicating about those services online to kind of support the easier switch over from the offline to online.
Yeah, so I think there's a really interesting use case that we've done, which is has been the most successful so far for the business, and it's highly data driven, which again was another reason for the thinking early on, and it has kind of not replaced, but it has helped the sales team reach that long tail that I was mentioning, sort of all of the volume of customers, not the super, the high value, but the sort of long tail. The use case is that within a lot of markets that we have, there are finite amounts of time to order your goods for shipping purposes and things like that. But because we have over 80 countries and lots of different embassies as part of that, the data that needs to go into driving when that shipping window is open, sending a notification around that being open, and then sort of also driving some personalization around that as well, was previously sort of like untenable, even from a salesperson's perspective. So what happened is that the sales team would continue to focus on those that are of the most value, and then a lot of the sort of the volume would be left. So when we put the data platform into place, and then we obviously wrote some comms for it, we were able to then start to reach those consumers at a very the right time, right place, right message, and help the sales and support the sales team in that way. And that has been something that has been quite a game changer for us, which I don't think is not revolutionary at all, but it's certainly the complexity of the data and the way that has been set up is quite amazing, actually. And then the results that it's returned for the business has been quite amazing.
Yeah. So what you're saying is that now, if before online, the consumer will always debate, when I need to order, what I need to order, and can they ship it to me in the middle of, let's say, Sudan by Friday. There were always a number of questions, and they had to probably call the salesperson. But what you're saying now is that has been automated, through communication, and pretty much with one click, from consumer standpoint, they can check very easily on your website when they log in when is the next window and by when they will receive the products. And at the same time, it simplified the salespeople's sort of awareness as well, because before that, they would probably need to have cooperation. When is the ship leaving for Sudan? Do I have time? Such and such person called and asked 1,000 bottles of champagne. Can we ship it? Yes or no? So yeah, that's
exactly.
That's definitely very unique and the services. And what about in terms of have you done anything on the engagement? So as currently they have one-to-one relationship with a salesperson, but that's always a big risk for B2B businesses, because when the salesperson leaves, you kind of have relationship, like they're gone, you kind of start from scratch. Mm-hmm. So is there anything that you kind of using technology or digital, are you able to support that sort of transition and longer term relationship building with customers, not taking salesperson out, but kind of supporting the salesperson and expanding that understanding of the exact customer needs? So are you using any CRM and that sort of notes?
Yeah. yes, I'd say if we were to call it a life cycle program, I guess is what we've put into place. So as the salesperson transitions or maybe doesn't transition but has less contact, then we can fill some of those gaps and opportunities, I guess, through just CRM and communication. So again, because we've got the data platform in place and because we know what they're purchasing and what other people around them are purchasing, some next best products, all of those sorts of things, we can make the communications feel personal and can feel relevant to them, and we can do it at scale. So that's how we're gradually transitioning and being able to pick up, I keep referring to it as long tail, but being able to pick up the volume customers that we wouldn't necessarily have been able to with the salespeople.
I'd like to ask like not a private question, but like my business private question, because it's such a niche, like hidden kind of industry. So have you seen so people would think there's like crazy parties going on in this embassy. So do you see orders like this kind of 1,000 bottles of champagne in the middle of Sudan thing? Is it real or is it just something people do?
We probably need to not disclose that. So, I mean,
you can pick every other country. So you can anonymize all the information. It could be Nigeria.
Yeah, so in a country that is dry, the embassies within in those countries are allowed to have their local privileges. So yes, they are allowed to host parties that are that have alcohol, and that's acceptable. And so, for example, I won't mention any countries, but they might have a celebration for the king's coronation coming up for a UK embassy, and then yes, they are allowed to host guests and they are allowed to drink alcohol, and all of that is completely fine. And yes, they're pretty fun.
No, I'm asking this question because it's such a valuable customer base you have there. It's so niche. You have the contact. You might have even the WhatsApp number or the Facebook Messenger number. It's on top of this kind of the liquor supply or whatever supplies, like a grocery supply. There's so much more stuff you can do. Not only because of the tax advantage. That's what I understand is one of the big leverages for your business, because it's kind of a tax-free thing or tax deductible thing if you order for an embassy, but it's a high net worth yes. Customer base, a very loyal one, because if I was a diplomat in Sudan and learned about your reliable service, obviously I don't start looking around. So I stick with your service. So I want to have even more. And it's kind of, you don't have the churn problem we are usually discussing in other podcasts where you're competing with Amazon or Alibaba and all the stuff, another cheaper supplier, faster delivery, whatever. Though you're in a, for me, it feels more like a B2B business. It's very hard to establish a first business relation. But when you have established the relation, there's a lot of upselling potential, right? That if it's a trusted, good customer relation, that makes this kind of business so interesting from my point.
It's to your point, actually. It is interesting because particular countries, say, or continents like Africa and then the Middle East, you're right. There are less competitors, although we still have competitors, but there is less to choose from. But it is a reality that we face definitely in our domestic markets, which is Brussels and London. They are more consumers and they order in the same way as a consumer does. They can go to a local shop and purchase wine and purchase beer and things like that. So in those markets, it becomes a more interesting challenge. But to your point also, I think one of the things there's a couple of things that we do which are interesting and I think probably set us slightly apart. One is we have a couple of people who work for us who are sommeliers or ex-sommeliers, and then we have people who have extreme wine knowledge. And so they go and they will attend embassies and they will host events. We host events where we do tastings and wine education and things like that. And I think that's something that our diplomats love and our community loves, because it's liquid in hand, which is utopia for any alcohol company. Two, it's fun and it's social, and usually they like you because you bring alcohol. But three, I think as well, is because if you are someone who is high up in the embassy and you're thinking about hosting an event, which they do, they obviously host their own events. They are also interested to learn more about wine and to understand what they can serve for their own guests. So I think that this is a service that is definitely unique to us and is quite interesting as a value add. which you wouldn't get if you sort of, in Brussels, if you go to a local retailer.
What is your growth bottleneck? Is it supply, so getting more champagne from the champagne producer? Is it like more customers, more markets? Is it inventory management? Because you have like 75 people now, even without like knowing the market exactly, but it must be a business where like you can easily employ like 1,000, 2,000 people if you do it right. So from a growth perspective, so what is like limiting you today, like in growing even faster? Apart from Magento, this I understand. This I understand.
Yes. We suffer the same issues that I think everyone globally does. Was from a supply perspective, we are limited. Our supply chain is through the big brands as well as distributors, and I think that we are. For example, if there isn't any Glenfiddich in the world, there isn't any Glenfiddich. So those sorts of things affect us as well, obviously. It's a really good question though, in terms of scaling up. We will see. So it is growing. We are growing. Even though you can't ignore the fact that it looks like some of the tech industries and things like that are also pulling back a tiny bit at the moment, but we continue to have strong growth, and particularly from an e-commerce perspective. So I think it will be interesting to see over the next couple of years now, as particularly from a marketing perspective, as we can gather momentum. We have a lot of projects and things in the pipeline to grow our business from an acquisition point of view. So I don't know if, apart from supply chain and shipping, but it's getting better. What is going to limit us right now?
Okay, and then my last question before Lina is closing the podcast was her like set of like last 5 to 10 questions. I don't know, we haven't taken on it yet. But let's assume I'm a producer of liquor. Let's say I'm producing like the best rum here in the country. Let's call it Super Graf rum, or Super Rum. And I want to get into this business, and I want to get through all the other retailers where like normal people can buy it. I would say for me, it seems like a very, very smart like brand building strategy to deploy something in this customer cohort, which is very, very exclusive. And then the Super Rum is only available like for diplomats worldwide, and they want to get into business with you. Can you guide me through the process? So how complicated is it? And I really have access to Super Rum, so it's not just a theoretical thing.
Yes, this could be a better question for the head of procurement actually than me necessarily. We do have we work with all the really big brands as well, but we also work with some craft brands. I think I would Jenny could probably answer this question better than I could, but we get approached by brands all the time, and I think it just depends. I think she obviously has a process that she needs to go through to have a look at in terms of how we secure the goods and how they can be transported to any of our hubs and things like that. But there isn't anything stopping any brand from approaching us, I guess.
Okay, so after this podcast, I can follow up with you and the head of procurement to figure out how the Super Run is getting into the next Sudan party.
Maybe I will just add to Christina in this on that. So yes, anyone can approach IDS, but there is I would say IDS is like Amazon, right? So if there is no demand, they will not hold the supply in their warehouses, right? So there are products that they distribute globally. So every single warehouse that they have will have that certain product available. There are products that are specific for the local market. So taking into account your Super Rum, you would probably say, okay, people in which part of the world, people like love drinking rum and unavailable. So let's say your Super Rum is already all over Germany, right? So you would probably approach IDS European entity, and you would say that like this is a Super Rum person A, B, and C. I don't know, like king of this and this, tried it and it's good. And at the other time, you can have a diplomats, right? So there are when Chrissina mentions missionaries, so you take it NATO or big organizations, right? So like big volume, like a lot of people scale. And you know, if we can guarantee the volume and everyone demands the product, we as IDS probably also would approach the brand and be like, look, in the last month, 2,000 people asked about Superall. Like, guys, you know, can you guarantee the volume? You know, because the biggest problem for IDS, they will not take you as a startup because it's a volume game, right? So they need to fill the containers.
No, but it's a very exclusive product, you know. It's like it's not like champagne. It's not like water.
Not
Super exclusive.
But they're not gonna ship one bottle, you know, to so they kind of. But they could come, you know, from diplomats and people requesting for it, and at the same time, you know, like we need to have the global brands, you know, because it's lower risk cost, and then consumers from different countries, different parts of the world, different cultures, with all, like, everyone always more champagne, you know, Jack Daniel's whiskey.
Okay.
So this is how it would work. So Chrissina, just the last question then. So what are your predictions for the e-commerce this and next year? As you mentioned, a lot of the companies pulling back, you know, and reducing, and saying, revising their sales targets. You are definitely growing as a business, and for you, e-commerce is still on the growth stage, you know, because you started just a few years ago. So what are your predictions? How are you seeing e-commerce shape in the next 18 months, let's say? And is there anything IDS gonna offer in 2024 that they're currently not offering online?
Yes, our ambition is to have a completely dynamic and personalized website for each customer. So that's something that we're working towards, and I think that will help shift things for us quite a lot. You're right. We are early at the beginning of our e-commerce journey, so we're slightly different from what I would say about maybe the rest of the industry necessarily, but we won't be pulling. I don't think that we'll see a decline, and because we've got so many new projects in the pipeline, and we are trying to transition people online and things like that, I think that this is not going to be such an issue for us. But I think the biggest opportunity is definitely social commerce. And because of the way that our customers order, and because the way people are generally interacting with us through social, I think that's our biggest opportunity. And what that looks like, particularly through WhatsApp, is what I'm most curious to see how that unfolds at the moment. But yeah, so I think I think the e-commerce will obviously grow and develop, and then the social commerce for me was probably the space that's most intriguing and particularly from a B2B perspective.
Nice. Well, let's see. You know, we'll probably next year for another part 2 of the podcast, and you never know. Maybe commerce will be bigger than
maybe Superall is already deployed.
Let's see. Okay. Yep. Fine. As long as I can have a bottle. You can.
We'll figure out after the recording how you can get a bottle of Superall, and then you can give your feedback.
Yeah, Chrissina, so tasting for you.
Chrissina, Lina, thank you for your time.